The Paris Metro is one of the oldest underground transport communications in Europe, dating back to the early 20th century. Why the country's government agreed to such huge expenses is a question. It is unlikely that at that time there were traffic jams on the streets of Paris from trams, carts and the first cars to move part of the city's traffic underground. And now let's look at a number of oddities in photographs taken during large-scale construction, which can tell why they began to go deeper. We started in the city squares, and when the soil was opened, some tunnels with stone arches were discovered, and in places inconvenient for builders. They were destroyed to get inside, and stone collectors were also opened. You might think it was a sewer. Judging by the fact that its pipes were also destroyed, it turns out that they didn't know about it and didn't use it. What can you understand from these photographs by looking at them? The first thing that raises a question is the smooth upper tiers. It seems that the vaults were concreted and then began to go deeper down. And then we came across an ancient tunnel with arches made of stone. It was used to remove rock by trolley. In this photo in the background you can see the tunnel splitting into two, with a smaller cross-section. But for some reason they are half filled with rock, and they are being cleared. What breed? Most likely, this is liquid soil that could not completely fill the tunnels due to the air cushion. And here, subway builders are strengthening the ancient stonework, reinforcing it and preparing it for pouring concrete. The second photo shows that builders are removing rocks from a narrow tunnel, which is lined with thick stonework. Well, there are many such examples. Let's look further. Here the workers are dismantling the old collector or tunnel, and the rock is also being removed through the part that has not yet been destroyed, not expanded. The vaults of the new metro tunnel are concreted. An interesting construction technology. First they go through such a low and wide passage underground, concrete the vaults, and then go deeper down. How is this possible? This explanation is more suitable here. The builders strengthened the arches of an older, wide, but flooded tunnel, and then increased its height by deepening downwards. In every square in Paris, from where they began to go deeper underground, destroyed sewers and ancient tunnels are visible. From these examples we can conclude that these ancient catacombs greatly helped the builders of the Paris Metro. Rock was removed through them, they were strengthened with concrete, expanded, and thus the volume of groundwork was much less. There are also small tunnels under Paris. These are sewers and drainage of rain streams. Whether these ancient collectors were used is unknown to us. But about large ancient tunnels, that's a question. What were they built for? According to legends, under every ancient city there are similar tunnels, so that from any old building you can get to another, or beyond the city. Perhaps they were an obligatory element during the construction of the city in the past. A security system for the elite or ordinary citizens in case of war. One of the explanations for why Paris needed such large-scale underground construction at a time when there were no traffic jams in the city is that in this way older communications were masked, adapting to the future. Near Paris, the underground area where the tunnels are located is 800 hectares. The workings began in the ancient Roman era with the aim of extracting lime blocks for construction. Later, in the Middle Ages, the catacombs were adapted for the needs of churches. Lime was stored and limestone was mined in small quantities for the new construction of churches. Until the mid-19th century, limestone was mined underground for the production of plaster. At the end of the century, King Louis XV decreed the creation of a general inspectorate of quarries, which still exists today. This occurred after the collapse of the gallery in 1774, when the house on the surface collapsed. According to official history, until the mid-10th century, the remains of about 6 million people were brought here from several cemeteries that existed next to churches. The catacombs turned into a mass grave. This explanation does not stand up to criticism. There is a version that these bones were collected after the cataclysm, after which the Renaissance began. The problem is how to link this period by dates. A break with the ancient Roman period simply huge. This helps explain the artificial chronological shifts discovered by modern researchers. Of the multi-kilometer network of tunnels, only a 1.7 kilometers section is open to tourists, but it is impossible to refuse a visit to the burial site with bones and skulls. This is included in the route. No one will get there without permission. Part of the catacombs is patrolled by the police. For visiting the tunnels outside the group, a fine of €60. Some tunnels were filled with concrete due to the threat of collapse and subsidence of soil on the surface. Some of the tunnels are flooded with groundwater in the waters of the Seine River. Oddly enough, there is no complete plan for the tunnel network. There are approximate drawings of those who illegally examined them. If these are tunnels from limestone mining, then this is a very strange mining. It would be more logical to create voluminous grottos with columns made of support rock. And here it is, the tunnel system that is visible. There's a version that their builders were rich people in the Roman era and later, connecting the descent from the basement of their house with the general system. If something happened, it would be safe to leave the city. Of course, only a select few could use this emergency exit from the city. The network of underground quarries in Paris is divided into 3 main ones in size. The most extensive is under the 5th, 6th, 14th, and 15th arrondissements of the city. The second is under the 13th, the third is under the 16th, and there are also other, but small networks of underground workings. The total length of the entire Parisian network of so-called quarries is 280 kilometers. These Parisian catacombs are located below the metro and sewers in limestone layers. In some books he publishes a truncated plan of the catacombs. It is unknown why these tunnels were built, since they do not look like an underground quarry at all. The most likely explanation, this was done in case of salvation from global cataclysms occurring on the surface. This could be not only a flood, but also all sorts of dangerous short-term natural phenomena that are not currently mentioned or put forward even as a version. There's also a drainage system near Paris. They are used as storm drains and cable laying. They claim that they were precisely used for the construction of the metro. Agree, what a huge scope for a drainage system. Here's a well-known fact about them. In 1805, Pierre-Emmanuel Burnett was appointed inspector of drains. Before him, no one had any idea about this system. There was not even a general plan for Paris. It was he who, at the beginning of the 10th century, undertook the first comprehensive study and mapping of Parisian drainages. His team of 12 people did this. However, after the first visit to the drains, a third of them refused to continue this research. Here is an example of a collector under Sevastopol Boulevard, a postcard from the early 20th century. What frightened the researchers? Sudden water flows or something that the workers never expected to see there? And it turns out that in the 10th century, everyone forgot who built this sewer system. The documents have not survived, or probably never existed. Here is another interesting phenomenon in France, related to the catacombs and underground tunnels. Only the length of these incomprehensible structures is already hundreds and hundreds of kilometers. City on the River Venne, France. It turned out to be not a river at all, but a giant canal with straight lines and regular angles across the whole of France, and this river is not on Google Maps. Apparently, it was erased. And it's on Yandex Maps. This canal is 286 kilometers. Here comes the river, and the Vienna River crosses this river. It flows and flows, and also crosses this river. And it's all a river. If you look at all this on a hybrid map, then this river is not here. Here it is, the Vienna River. It cannot cross buildings, houses, roads on the surface like this. It goes 200 kilometers, crosses a river, and the cross river flows through another river. They diverge at angles and go further through rivers, across highways, through houses, through buildings. These are probably channels that go underground. That's the only explanation. Why does this river go underground here? Otherwise there would be an increase in greenery around this river. Let's say there is some kind of river here, then there should definitely be an increase in greenery around it. Here is a similar example. An underground aqueduct in Syria goes to Jordan at a depth of several tens of meters and a length of 200 kilometers. There is a similar underground canal, Neglinka River near Moscow, length 7.5 kilometers. In order for water to flow with sufficient force and flow, the slope must be set within fractions of a degree. Modern builders must understand that completing such a structure in the conditions of our civilization is more than a global task. If you think about it, it is clear that these are complex calculations. How strong should the walls of an underground channel have? How can we ensure that soil movements, gullies, and landslides do not destroy the canal over such a long period of time? How to calculate on a 3D landscape that the channel will not go outside? It will not run into rocks, failure, and so on. Who carried out geological exploration and with what? Was it cut with a plasma laser or with mining equipment? What did they cover or fill the walls with in those ancient times? How to clean and maintain hundreds of kilometers of such an underwater channel? If there are wells, then there's a drainage of dirt from the surface into spills during the rainy season, and so on. There will definitely be erosion of the rock after some time. Some of the channel will be clogged, and all these are just questions that came to the mind of a non-specialist in such technologies. It is a known fact that there are also similar catacombs in Rome. This one is buried in the shoes. Passages, rooms in which burials in underground churches were created in the early Christian period. There are more than 30 places with underground galleries. Only 6 of them have been more or less cleared and are accessible to tourists. They won't let you in there just like that. Some catacombs have a name. Among them are the catacombs of Saint Sebastian, Domitilla, Priscilla, Saint Agnes, and so on. The total length of the catacombs reaches 170 kilometers. Of course, no one knows their exact length. For what reason these catacombs were made, historians have no answers. It is only known that the first catacombs arose for the construction of Christian burials and for underground churches. Initially they were not called that, they used the concept of cemiteria. This is a bedroom, a tomb. There is a version that crypts, graveyards, and tombs were used in a past civilization. When a person passed into a new apostasis, called the divine level of development, he fell into a lethargic sleep, he was placed in a tomb, and en masse he was simply covered with earth. These places were called graveyards, that is, a temporary shelter. When a person went through the pupation stage, the body was modified, and then consciousness returned to the body. At the same time, he could independently get out of the tomb, the crypt, where the guardian met him. He called relatives and handed them over. This is where all the myths of European and American culture come from about the evil dead rising from their graves and driving aspen stakes into them so that they die completely. In the Roman catacombs, arcosoli niches were made in the corridors and rooms. These are arched niches, cubes, chambers, rooms, sarcophagi. They also find a burial in the floor. In the tourist catacombs, they are empty. All the remains were stored in other rooms. Already in biblical times, rich people and saints were buried there, decorated with precious stones and expensive armor and in rich clothes. These are the relics of the saint from the catacombs of St. Pancras. The given examples of excavated tunnels around the world and catacombs indicate that they were built by a previous civilization for purposes unknown to us today.